Hey, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Sarah Schultz. I am a realtor in the Northern Nevada market, serving Reno, Sparks, Carson City, and all the surrounding areas. But on today's video, as I do each and every month, I'm going to be giving you my data deep dive with all of the KPIs in our market that were just published for the closeout of April in our market. All of the data is published at the end of each month, so we look at it in arrears, but not to worry with that. I will be analyzing it and giving you my predictions and my best advice for both buyers and sellers at the end of the video, so make sure you don't go anywhere. So just keep in mind as I'm moving through all these data points that these metrics are for all of Washoe County, and these are only for single family residences, so this does not include condos or townhouses, vacant land, manufactured homes, and of course not commercial real estate, because that is not my bag, baby. Without further ado, let's start with median sales price, which unsurprisingly did increase, only so slightly, but it did increase by 2.6%, landing at $585,000. Year over year, we also saw a slight increase of 3.5%. This is not surprising, despite economic conditions and things going on in the country and world at large. Here in Reno and our area in general, we are in a period of insane economic development, and we're seeing a lot of big business coming here. With that come a lot of people who need houses. It is really creating a strong demand in our market, not to mention the scarcity of inventory, which has been a challenge here and pretty much everywhere for several years, but more on that later. Let's keep going. Up next, we will talk about number of closed sales. So for the month of April, we saw 380 closed sales in our market. This was a very minor change month over month, only going down by 2.8%, and year over year only going down by 0.5%. So really marginal, not much to write home about there. So with that, I'm gonna keep going. Median days to contract. Now, this one did see a significant change, and this actually really surprised me because here on the ground the market feels a lot hotter than what these numbers are kind of indicating, and these numbers are in arrears, right? So we're not only looking at a month that has already closed and is already over with, but you also have to remember that these metrics are, based on closed sales. So in our market, the average escrow is around 30 days. When someone makes an offer, it's based on current market conditions, right? So what we can conclude is that these are not only, a month in arrears, but also they're kind of more indicative of what was going on possibly 30 days prior to that, just because that is what people make their offers based upon. If that didn't make sense, feel free to drop a comment below and I'm happy to explain further, or you can book a free call with me. There's a link to do that in the show notes, and I can break all this down in a much more digestible fashion if needed. But for now, I'm gonna carry on. All right, next up we have percent of list price received. So for ease in numbers, if a home is listed at 500K, this is telling you what percentage of that 500K the seller actually walked away with. This number, if you guys have been watching me for a while, you know that in our market, this number really doesn't shift too drastically in either direction pretty much ever. I always say that this number is the most consistent, and this month is no different. It came in at 98.7% of list price received. That's only down by 0.3%. So again, very marginal change. That's month over month. Year over year, we're looking at also a decrease of 0.3%. So really not a lot has shifted there. Up next is median price per square foot, and we're talking about the sold price. We're not talking about list price, because obviously usually those two things aren't completely the same. Even if it's only a marginal difference, it is important to point that out. And our median price per square foot landed at $322. This is a 2.5% increase month over month and a 5.2% increase year over year. Up next is number of new listings. Now, it is the spring market. This time of year, it is very typical, as we are seeing, to have a lot more choices for buyers, right? Like inventory is really ramping up, and I just had a really busy weekend where I showed multiple buyers many houses. I think I'm at a record. I think I showed 46 different properties, and that included new construction and resale homes all in a 3-day period. Yeah, your girl is tired. Send help. But anyway, that said, it does feel like buyers have a lot more options this year than they have in years past. This is good news if you are thinking about shopping this spring, and I do predict that as we get further into the warmer months of summer, that number is going to continue to increase. This landed at 567 new listings for the closeout of April. This is up 5% month over month and up a whole 9% year over year. And I predict, like I said, at the closeout of May, I think we're going to see an even bigger jump. So we'll have to see what happens, but that is how it's feeling on a very real level here on the ground. So we currently have 875 active single-family listings in Washoe County. This number also increased by 6.4% month over month and 39.3% year over year. So you have 39.3% more choices right now for active inventory than you did a year ago. That said, if you're thinking about being a buyer, you have so many listings to choose from, or at least it feels that way after being in a very tight market for the last several years. But I'm going to dig into that, so don't go anywhere. I have one more KPI, and then we're going to get into the good stuff. Months supply of inventory. If you are not aware, this number is basically telling you how long it would take if no new inventory hit the market from the time that this data was published. This is telling you the amount of time that it would take for all of the current inventory to be absorbed, and that number is 2.3 months. Now, this number increased month over month by 9.5% and increased a whopping 40.1% year over year. Now, let's really dig into these numbers because they are talking. So, based on these numbers, it does look like the market appears to be softening ever so slightly into the favor of buyers. Even though it was a huge increase of 53.8%, days on market still landed at only 20 days. So yeah, it is a drastic change month over month, but in the grand scheme of things, a listing sitting for 20 days only has 2 to 3 weekends on market. That number, even though it has increased, is not very much time. I don't want to give you a false sense of hope that it's like this crazy strong buyer's market, because that simply isn't true. Truly, we are still in a seller's market. However, some of these numbers are showing that maybe we are kind of softening in potentially a different direction, but I think we're going to have to kind of wait and see how that shakes out. I think that the numbers at the end of May are going to be very telling of what the summer potentially could look like. The next piece of advice for my buyers out there is that we want to keep an eye on properties of interest for price corrections or just the market in general, because even though it was ever so slight, the price per square foot did dip. Now, that is median, it's not average, so it does obviously depend on the actual listings that were sold, but it is something worth keeping an eye on for sure. That said, interest rates are still a factor, prices are still high, affordability in general is still going to be a challenge for buyers. It is suppressing many buyers still, but I can tell you here on the ground, boots on the ground, the real story is that in certain price ranges and for listings that show well, meaning maybe they're staged nicely, maybe, all the cosmetic first glance stuff is already perfect, those listings are very competitive to the point where I had a few over the weekend where the listing agent said, please don't make any offers expire before Tuesday because we are going to have so many that we're going to have to review and present with our sellers. I don't want to give you the false sense of hope that if you're a buyer, all of a sudden the ball is just magically in your court. That's not true. It really is listing specific. So if you have a specific listing that you're looking at or have questions about, feel free to reach out. I would love to give you my professional opinion about that. So with homes taking slightly longer to go under contract, again, median days to contract is only 20 days, so let's not panic, but it is significantly more than the month that preceded this one. It is very safe to say that both price and presentation matter a lot more now than they have in a very long time. What I would say to a seller is, if you know your listing is most likely going to be a flip, if somebody's going to buy it, gut it, fix it, resell it, etc., okay, don't bother fixing anything, probably, right? Sell it as is and price it accordingly. However, if you think that your home is not going to be purchased by a flipper and there are some minor cosmetic, perhaps, things that need to be addressed, paint scuffs, baseboards, the lawn needs to be mowed, just little curb appeal type maintenance-y things, don't neglect those because you have a lot more competition now than you have in a very long time, and buyers have a lot more choices. If your listing is the same as the one next door, but they've done all the paint and the lawn and, all the little things, or maybe their listing is staged beautifully, which really helps a buyer to envision their life in that home, well, I'm sorry to say it, but you may be missing out because that listing is going to look a lot better. I think in this situation, it is very, very worthwhile to spend, minimal funds towards fixing things up, maybe potentially having it staged. And typically, I say in certain price ranges, you never really need to worry about that just because some price ranges things go quickly. However, I am kind of changing my perspective on that lately. I would say if you have the means, that staging is almost always a good idea. It still is a seller's market by a long shot, but you do have to be prepared for your listing to probably sit a bit longer than it was before. What other questions do you have about the market? It's pretty wild out there. Like I said, I am really on edge anticipating the data for the closeout of May, the month that we're in now, because it really, really feels like someone just turned a switch on overnight. So, what questions do you have? Feel free to drop them in the comments below. Or if you have any questions about our market, real estate in general, you can book a free call with me. It is no obligation, no pressure, just a chance to connect, see if we might be a good fit to work together at the very least. Help you devise your next and best steps. There's a link to do that in the show notes below. And if you haven't already, please smash the like and that subscribe button. I put out new videos each and every week about the Northern Nevada lifestyle, the Reno, Sparks, and surrounding areas, real estate market, and of course, all things to do with buying and selling real estate. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you guys next week.